Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Today we're going to look at the Bluegrass Stakes, one of the final Derby preps for the 3-year-olds, and it's a good-sized field and looks like there's some interesting opportunities. So let's take a look at it. The Bluegrass Stakes is a Grade 1 run at Keeneland, and it's run at a mile and an eighth for 3-year-olds on dirt. And you look at the configuration, it's pretty straightforward, mile and an eighth track, so there's no built-in impediments. Number 1 is the much exalted Tapit Trice, everybody's now horse, it seems like. We know what the issues are with this one, don't we? He just is slow out of the gate, doesn't break poorly, but he does break slowly, and it takes a while for this one to get into gear. Witnessed by his last effort in the Tampa Derby. Luis Saez was leaning on him hard just to get him engaged at the top of the stretch, and he really had to be really impressive in order to pull this one out with that big kick late. So this one is still green, and there are still some issues with him, but you can't deny the talent. The added challenge is with this one, I think, is since he's on the rail, there's a good possibility that he's going to have to deal with kickback for the first time or negotiate some traffic. Usually what they've been doing is taking him to the outside and let him get into his stride and start a run. So I'm not sure how handy or tactical this one is, and that may present a problem in this race that doesn't have a lot of early pace. So there's a couple things to keep in mind. We can't deny the talent, and we certainly have to use him. And I think he's a win candidate, but he does have a couple obstacles that perhaps he hasn't dealt with before. Number 2 is Clear the Air. We saw him in the Gotham, and he had one of the weirdest rides I've ever seen. Gilligan sent him up. He broke really well. He was up around the pace leaders, and then for some reason he took him back towards the rear, and then he re-rallied and finished an okay fifth, but really a non-factor fifth in the race. So it was kind of a strange race, and so I don't really know what to make of this one, but really, more than anything else, you see the buyers are just not even close to some of the better ones in here. So I really can't expect this one to be a factor. So he's out of the mix. Number 3 is Verifying. I have been pretty high on this horse. I think that allowance win to debut his 3-year-old year showed some talent. Always love a horse who comes out to debut at 3 with a career high buyer. Won pretty impressively over a pretty good field. Gun Pilot and Two Eagles River, just to name a couple. The Rebel Stakes was obviously a big disappointment, and I think Cox was unhappy too because he took Florent Giroux off him in favor of Tyler Gaffleone for this race. I think this one is capable of better, and I think the fact that there's not much pace in this race, I think this one has a really good opportunity to factor, and I think he's definitely a use, and he's a possible win candidate for sure. Number 4 is Classic Car Wash. Really didn't like anybody out of those Tampa races aside from Tapit Trice. They're just, I don't think he's fast enough. Yes, he showed improvement in the last one, but Tapit Trice showed what the difference in class was when he kicked it into high gear in the stretch. So, is it possible that this one can finish underneath in the try of the Super? Sure, but he's pretty outclassed here, and it's basically a clunk up is the best that this one, I think, has to offer. Hay Strike is one that seems to be getting better. His last race in the private terms saw him a little more forwardly placed than he had been, and he won a nice race. It wouldn't stack up with any of the horses in this race, I don't think. And really the biggest problem is Kenny McPeak is just over the century taking horses off of LASIK. So that's a big negative. And I don't think this one would really stack up anyway. So I'm tossing him. Maybe if you like him, put him in for 4th. But I don't think I think that's the best he could possibly do, considering also the fact that he lugged in the stretch in the last one. And so this is a longer distance. So I just don't like him in this spot. Scoby Queando is kind of intriguing, number 5. He was really good on synthetic, and his pedigree screams it. As we noted previously, his dam in particular does very well with synthetic. that doesn't mean he can't run well in dirt. He is sired by Uncle Mo, and most of his siblings have been better on synthetic and turf. And his dam is 0 for 2 in roots with pretty low buyers. The interesting thing here is that he did scratch out of the Jeff Ruby to get into this spot. Now, I don't know what that means, but I can say that Ben Colebrook has done pretty well this year. So he's kind of interesting. You're certainly going to get a price. And if he's up, if he's a little more forwardly placed and takes another jump forward, it's possible he could get underneath. I don't think he's a win candidate, but he's an interesting thought about using. Sun Thunder, I think this is, basically a desperation move on Kenny McPeak's part. The Louisiana Derby had to be disappointing, given what he did in the Risen Star. A couple things I noticed in watching the race again. Number one is he was definitely intent on getting more forwardly placed. I think they anticipated the slow pace, but he got shuffled back because of the tight pack up in front of him, so he was sent back to the rear. So I thought that was a good sign that there was some intent to get him more into the race early. And once things opened up, he did okay, and he had a mild close. So I think maybe with a little better trip, he perhaps can become a factor. I'm not sure about him as a win candidate. They seem to be putting him on the rail to save ground a lot, and in this race, I think that might be an issue given a lot of the late runners. He might get taken back again. So I think he's a use. I think I'd like him more underneath. I'm not so sure he's a win candidate. Blazing Sevens is, the wild card in this race. We really don't know, do we? The Foundry Youth was a complete non-factor. He didn't do a lick of running. Yes, Chad Brown did tell us he needed one, and it was kind of just a formal workout, if you will. But I would have liked to have seen him do a little more to show some more competitiveness, and that was kind of the thing I'm left with. Now, if you go back to his Breeders' Cup Juvenile, which was run at Keeneland, he did finish fourth, and he came from the back, and he didn't do bad. He looked like he was comfortable on 2 turns, so I'm not going to worry about that a whole lot. But here's the thing that I think really steps this one up. Chad Brown is adding blinkers. He is 44% and 81% in the money first-time blinkers with a layoff with 3-year-olds in graded stakes with a 684 ROI. Now, that's pretty telling, I think. So if this one can build off of his 2-year-old form, and I would guess he's going to probably they're going to probably try to put him a little more up near the lead this time, maybe mid-pack or a little closer. This one, if he could very well do it. So I think you have to use him. And I'm a little, I think after that last race, maybe you're going to get a reasonable price. And, obviously Chad's expecting big things because he's got Irad Ortiz on him. So I think this one is a definite use, and you could even toy with him as a win candidate. Major Blue is Dwayne Lucas. He's got to be in the big ones, so he's throwing this one in. Now, this one isn't just a sacrificial lamb, I don't think. This one has showed steady improvement, and in his maiden victory, he wired the field and did so pretty convincingly and pretty impressively. It wasn't a top-of-the-line maiden race, but the next race, when he moved him to a sprint, he had a hot duel all the way around, and he was able to hold everybody off and shake clear, and he really stepped up buyer-wise as well as class. So I think it's almost a certainty that this one will be on the lead, and I think he'll likely try to slow it down given the late runners in this race. And with a little luck, he could hang in there. I can't believe he'd be able to wire the field unless he took a monster leap, which I don't think is likely. But you might think about using this one underneath, because if it stays with all the early pace, which is a good possibility in this race, then he could just hang around and get third. So he's a curious horse, but I think there's some ways that you can use him to help your tickets at a decent price. Race King, we saw in the Gotham, that weird race in the mud. with all the sprinters stretching out. The pace was red hot, and so naturally Lescano kept him way off of it, and he closed with authority, and he drew off from the field pretty impressively. The only thing is there wasn't much of a field, and most of them were just sprinters who didn't want the distance. So you have to take that in mind. But if you go back to the gun runner, for instance, he was more forwardly placed running behind Jace's Road and determinedly, and rated and finished a pretty good second. So why do I bring that up? Because I think this one will be more in the mix early. I think he'll be more forwardly placed. And if he can take another move forward, I think then he factors in this race. I would use him more for the exotics. I don't necessarily think that he's a win candidate, but I think he's one that you could be comfortable using in the race. Then the last contestant, number 11, is Mendelssohn's March, and this looks a little early for him to be in this race. And really, as we mentioned before with Kenny McPeak, the big problem is this one is coming off Lasix, and Kenny McPeak is just awful in that scenario. And so given that and his lack of experience, and I don't see, even if he takes a jump forward, I don't think he'll have enough in the speed department to factor in this race. So he would be a toss. So let's take a look at our top 5 and see what it looks like. Our top 5 are number 5, Classic Car Wash. I think you're going to get some pretty good value. We know what this one's going to do, and he has a good possibility that he'll end up in the money. So I like him because you're probably going to get a decent price. Number 4 is Raised Cane. He has shown some ability. I think he's going to be forwardly placed in this race, and I think that's a good thing. If he takes another step forward, I think he's definitely in the mix, and under the right circumstances, he could even win the thing. But I think you're going to get value, so we use him at number 4. Number 3 is Blazing Sevens. Now, this is a bit of a crapshoot. There's no denying it, but the great blinkers percentage and this horse's form at 2-year-old, I think put him in the mix, and I don't think Chad Brown would put him in this race unless he was serious. So I think we use Blazing Sevens, and he's a possible win candidate. Number 2 is Verifying. I think he's in the ideal position, being a stalker. I think he's going to have a pace to run to that's not going to be too quick. It should be relatively honest, and if it is, he's going to be right there, and he's going to have the jump on the rest of them. So I think Verifying is a pretty good win candidate here. Number 1 is Tapit Trice. Yes, he's got plenty of ability, but he's also got a lot of issues, and we know what they are. They've been belabored by everybody. I think in this race, he is going to have to probably run 1.5 miles because he's going to have to circle the field from the one hole, and he is going to likely encounter traffic and kickback for the first time, and we'll just have to see how he handles it. But there's a world of ability here, and he's a logical win candidate. So that's the Bluegrass Stakes. It is definitely Tapit Trice's race to lose. There's no doubt about that. But, there are some issues there, so it's not a lock. And there are some other possible options that I think offer some good value. So I think we all need to be open-minded leading up to this race and see what the tote board looks like because, if things don't go well for him, there's definitely some other candidates in here who I think could possibly take this one down. I will have something for you later this week on the All Stakes Pick 5 on Saturday at Keeneland as part of our Keeneland card series. And we also have videos for the Santa Anita Derby as well as the Wood Memorial. As soon as they become available, I'll get them out to you. I don't know why they've been slow this week in presenting them. So if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe. We really do appreciate it. And I wish you the best of luck in your wagering, and I'll be talking to you soon.